Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix is finally here and plenty of teams are bringing upgrades this weekend. McLaren have a big one, Ferrari bringing a few new pieces, Red Bull apparently as well, and also Toto Wolff suggesting that indeed Mercedes will bring new parts this weekend as with the upcoming weekends before their big upgrade in a few weeks time. Very much intrigued to get your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, big news from AlphaTauri confirming that their current team principal Franz Tost will be stepping down at the end of the year. This has been coming. It's been talked about for some time. Franz Tost, he's been around a long time, right? Austrian former driver, was around since the Toro Rosso days, and doesn't really take too much of the limelight. Franz Tost, he makes the occasional comment here or there, but seems like a nice bloke, and he's going to be moving on from Formula 1, it seems. The article confirms that, as we saw the other day, Laurent Mekies, formerly of, well, currently of Ferrari, currently sporting director at Ferrari, will be joining Scuderia AlphaTauri as their new TP at a date to be confirmed. Rumour has it probably next season, so I guess that would make sense, right, given the fact that he's stepping down Tost at the end of this year. So there we go, and that's pretty much the discussion that's being had. The new CEO as well, so an entirely new management structure, but Laurent Mekies will be leaving Ferrari to join Scuderia AlphaTauri as they try and bounce back a bit, because they had a very strong car a couple of years ago. Even last year in Baku, what was it, Gasly got a P5. This year it's not looking particularly likely. Tsunoda is doing very well in that car, but it is, I believe, on average over the first 3 races, the slowest car. So they've got to seriously change things around, because Red Bull do not want them to be bad, because what's the point in having them if they're going to be fighting for points rather than consistently in them? And Red Bull have been offered a lot of money for that specific spot, as we discussed over the other days. I thought this was pretty funny, I've got to say, from Mercedes. If you guys remember with this press conference right Bahrain 2020, when the question was asked to Lewis Hamilton and others, what do you think about the supposed or the potential of a salary cap? And the journalist asked Hamilton, like, Franz Tost says that drivers should not be paid more than 10 million and that they should drive for the love of the car and this type of stuff. And Hamilton says, who said that? And then the journalist says, Franz Tost. And then he goes, who's Franz Tost? And that's exactly the screenshot here. So pretty funny at the time and still today, because, he's usually out of the limelight, that guy. But they're making changes over there at AlphaTauri, and they most certainly need to. They also need to change their car, as are a lot of the teams that aren't the Red Bull of Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Must be said that over the 6 times the Grand Prix has been run in Baku, there's never been a repeat winner. So we'll see. If we look at the winners in the past, it would probably be most likely Fernando Alonso. He hasn't won there before. That's a possibility. Or maybe one of the Ferrari guys, but maybe that's particularly unlikely. Or possibly a George Russell as well. Alpine will bring a big upgrade here, a new floor they're bringing to Baku with some smaller stuff for Miami, and then to try and consolidate that in Imola. So Alpine are looking to take a relatively big step forward this weekend. It makes sense, right? The big break with no China. Teams have been working hard over these last 3 weeks on upgrades and trying to bring stuff into the pipeline. Potentially in a few months' time, the crash that Gasly and Ocon had back in Australia might hurt them from a cost cap perspective. It almost certainly will to some degree, but in the short term, they still have enough firepower to make changes. Even Lando Norris as well mentions from the McLaren perspective that they are bringing some new parts. 3 weeks of productive sim work with the team, and I think he mentioned even on his Twitch stream that the new upgrades they're bringing are promising, but they're most likely to be effective in more of the kind of faster corners and not necessarily impacting their straight line speed. So he's not really predicting a circuit like Baku, where there is a tricky corners with the castle section and stuff, to be particularly good for this new version of the McLaren. It might be okay, it might be better, but it's unlikely to be spectacular by any means, and it's probably not going to make their car a rocket ship in a straight line, which you need around Baku. And we saw last year Alpine were very fast, even AlphaTauri were very fast, and this year Red Bull and potentially Williams and even Haas have been showing a lot of promise in a straight line, which is very valuable around Azerbaijan. If you guys have watched a Grand Prix there before, quick note as well on what Ferrari are doing. Fred Vasseur says, in recent weeks we have worked hard in Maranello on the development of the SF23. The update will be introduced gradually over the coming races. Charles and Carlos did their part. We already made a step forward, he says, in Australia, and for Azerbaijan we intend to start from there. And this is the question about Fred Vasseur, right? Because I don't know if it's the fact that when you work at Ferrari you get infected with this mentality, but it feels like Fred Vasseur is saying a lot of things kind of that Mattia Binotto would have said, right? Talking about how, it's looking promising, we're taking steps forward. Australia was somehow a positive race despite scoring no points. You guys remember Hungary last year where Mattia Binotto said, I see no reason why we can't win the 10 remaining races of the season. I'm like, I can see plenty of reasons why that would be the case. And Helmut Marko says, look, Ferrari has been underperforming so far. I don't understand how Vasseur sees everything in a positive light. So quite the words from Helmut Marko. Marco, and also Ferrari are struggling with the dirty air. I think we saw in Jeddah especially that car seems to struggle in the dirty air of the cars in front, especially the Mercedes. It seems when the Mercedes is in front and the Ferraris behind, they do seem to struggle a fair bit. According to the FIA, the kind of dirty air phenomenon is still significantly less than it was in 2021, but it is worse than last year, which does mean that the quality of racing is kind of inferior to what we had last season, probably expected as the teams engineer more and more downforce they can possibly get onto the cars, but it's just how it is, and it's affecting Ferrari and the Haas the most, and that's especially bad when you're stuck towards the front of the midfield, as Ferrari kind of are, as well, the fourth, third, maybe second fastest team on their day. Even Sainz said, right, Fernando Alonso is closer to his 33rd win out of the two Spanish drivers than I am to my second. Aston is a bit better than us, especially in races. If I was at home, I would be supporting him too. We need Red Bull to fail, and we need to step up as well to beat AMR and Mercedes. So interesting and kind of an unfortunate comment from a Ferrari perspective from Sainz that he's like, yeah, look, Alonso is in a better car than us right now, which is true, but still, that admission is quite the statement. Helmut Marko has also dared Mercedes to basically copy the Red Bull in order to catch up with them. We will see what Mercedes do this weekend. Rumours emerging of a new suspension design and philosophy to accommodate the updates they're making to their car. Whether that will more closely align with what the Red Bull looks like, that's a big question, but we will have to see what they come up with, right? Of course, James Allison made his thoughts known the other day on the firepower they have to put lap time onto the car. Okay, it's going to be small things in the shorter term, but they will need to maintain their kind of relative performance level in the next couple of races before their big update package arrives, because if they are around Baku, they shouldn't really be that good. More of a rear limited circuit. If Alpine are bringing a big upgrade, if McLaren are bringing a big upgrade, Mercedes might well be, as they were in Bahrain, the fourth fastest car, being challenged from behind rather than looking forward, depending on what they bring this weekend. So if they don't bring anything big, they could be in for a rough time, given most other teams pretty much are. Of course, James Allison also mentioned the intention to overtake, and Toto Wolff has now given his pre-race thoughts on the weekends, where he confirms the car will be significantly evolving over the coming weeks, effectively confirming that indeed changes will be arriving every weekend. The first couple of paragraphs here are probably the most important. We've had a few weeks off from racing, but both factories have been hard at work. We have tried to maximize this period, bringing in planned development to the car and extracting as much as possible from our learnings. Australia show we're making progress, but we need to be cautious about reading too much into this single result and saying that over the next few races, we want to keep on making small steps forwards. No magic bullets, but the car will continue to evolve as we steadily bring performance and upgrade to the tracks. We believe it's going to be happening every single weekend. This was James Allison's words yesterday, where he says there'll be no exception in Baku. There will be new parts for every race, sometimes a few more pieces, sometimes they'll take pieces away depending on what they think is going to take them in the right direction, but the rumour has it it's going to be suspension related. We mentioned this briefly the other day, how the Red Bull front and rear suspension seems to be giving them an edge, certainly maybe on the front suspension side of things, just because that's where Mercedes believe Aston Martin are also extracting quite some performance in, especially the slower corners and the traction zones. So work to be done for Mercedes, but this weekend we're not expecting to see any major performance jumps from this package, whatever they're bringing to the car. It's probably more preparatory for next time out, and every weekend Mercedes and other teams get to learn more about the way their car behaves. They've been at 3 circuits so far, different circuits in their own ways, but Baku is again very different, as I say. Traction zones out of certainly turn 2 and through the end of sector 1 and certainly sector 2, where traction is very important, more rear limited, not too many more front limited corners. Okay, the end of the lap, but apart from that, not so much, whereas in general Australia, very different story. So different cars should be good here, but then again, who knows, right? It's difficult to predict with only 3 races in how certain cars are going to perform at certain weekends, apart from the Red Bull that you can be pretty much sure is going to be the fastest car on any given weekend right now. Hamilton was also in the simulator doing some work here, you guys can see, driving around Baku, going down I think into turn 2 that I was mentioning. But yeah, Hamilton isn't in the simulator all that often at Mercedes. I mean, he doesn't really like the simulator in general, so he will put some time in and probably testing some of the new upgrades that they are bringing for this weekend. And as I mentioned earlier, there have been 6 winners in the 6 times that the Azerbaijan Grand Prix has been run, and no F1 driver has won twice, right? So Rosberg in 2016, then Riccardo, Hamilton, Bottas, Perez and Verstappen. So yeah, 3 Mercedes drivers on there, 3 Red Bull drivers on there, but no Ferrari or Aston Martin drivers. So we'll see, right? Verstappen will more than likely just break the curse, right? If none of Verstappen or Perez win, would be a massive surprise. But if they were both to DNF and Alonso was was to win, I think Alonso would take the lead in the championship. So I guess just stay tuned for that one. It's not going to happen more than likely, but who knows? It's at least a possibility, and it might be the only time that's possible this season if the Red Bulls continue to pull away. And just to mention, as I saw the 6 winners there, the frustration from Ferrari, there have been plenty of pole positions, a lot from Charles Leclerc over the last few years, and they have never translated that into success. Whereas Red Bull have never taken pole and have won 3 out of the 6 times it has been run. And just one final confirmation, because I know Karun Chanok said they're trying to make F1 into Mario Kart, and thankfully this has been reverted, but they were trying to bring in LED wheel covers on the cars to display extra information for the fans and probably put some extra sponsors on there. If you're McLaren, I'm sure they'd try and give that a go, but that has been denied. They're not doing that. I think they've been considering it though for some time, and I wouldn't be massively surprised, here's the way the lights are meant to be, if they actually pull this off in the future, but I think for now they've decided it's not really worth it, but they'll probably keep trying, so I guess stay tuned. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.